All right, guys, welcome. Free Training Thursdays. Week is almost over. One more week through tax season here. For those of you guys who are in the accounting industry, congratulations, you're almost there. Today, our topic is tracking time with time cards. So we're going to be discussing that specific method of time entry, getting guys up to speed on how that interacts with the program, how you're going to end up accessing time cards, and that type of thing. So, when it really boils down, time tracking for a lot of people is an imperative piece of the puzzle when it comes to making sure that staff time is being utilized appropriately, maybe flat rates are being given out correctly, that type of thing all is derived from the amount of time that's being tracked. So it is very important in a lot of instances that you guys understand how the different methods of time entry can coexist and get you some reportability and that type of thing. So that's going to be what our topic is today. We're going to move through here real quick through this slideshow. Here are a couple of the points that we're going to be talking about. The context of time cards, what does that actually mean inside of the program? Method number one, how to access time cards, manual creation. Method number two, automatic creation. Global time card options, some staff-specific time card options, various autofill settings that I wanted you guys to be aware of, and then ultimately, once you're using time cards, where do they go and how do you access them? So that's kind of our agenda for today as far as the topics that we're going to be covering, getting you guys up to speed on that type of stuff. Once this session is over, if you guys have any questions or need anything, here are a couple of links. Webinars, how to access them, how to access support, abacusnext.com/support for any questions that you have or if you need additional training. And then if you want to know about upcoming webinars, abacusnext.com/webinars. So keep those in mind, jot those down, make sure that you guys have those on hand in case you guys want to follow up this Free Training Thursday. Another thing I want to bring to your guys' attention, just so that you guys know about it and that it's in front of you, we are holding our conference, Abacus Maximus, and I want you guys to be aware of that because it does allow you guys, if you wanted to, come learn about OfficeTools a little bit more, learn about what we provide, and also learn about Abacus as a whole. And this includes keynotes, trainings, breakout tracks, and just so you guys can see there's an evening event July 9th. And then the actual conference itself from the 10th to the 11th. There is available CPE. You guys can go check out all the exhibitors that we have if you were interested in that, a couple of the special things that are happening during the event. And these tickets are on sale now. So right now there's probably early bird specials going on. That price will reflect that. As we get closer and closer, that price goes up. So if you're interested in getting in there and actually attending this conference, you can visit abacusmaximus.com, and that's going to be, again, July 9th through the 11th. And take a look at that. Even if you're, think you're busy or whatever, just take a look, see what it has to offer. See if there's a way that you guys can fit that into your schedule. Because from a training perspective, it's jam-packed full of information on OfficeTools specifically, while also allowing you guys to get in and learn a little bit more about some of the leading ideas in the industry. So if you're interested, take a look at that. abacusmaximus.com, again, for the actual website. If you have some time, take a look at that. Without further ado, we're going to jump into the actual presentation here on time cards. So what time cards are inside of OfficeTools is your ability to track time, and it is one of three methods of time entry. So if you guys have attended previous webinars, you probably have seen the how to track time using timers webinar. So there are different methods of tracking time within our program, and they all have their purpose, they all have their time, but understand that while time cards are going to play a very important role in how you track time, it is not the only way to go about it. If some of your office are timer-minded people, they like to start and stop a running clock, then have them check out timers. If you want to do something where when you're done with the job or when you pause, working on something, you want to track a time card. That's what we're going to show you today. And then there's also another method of actually tracking time directly on your timesheet. So So that's more of a manual entry. So understand in the long run that time cards, while very important and you'll probably use them pretty frequently, they are not the only method of time entry. So just wanted you guys to be aware of that. A couple of housekeeping things when it comes to time tracking in general. What you guys want to make sure of before you try to dive into actually tracking time is that you've addressed some of the back-end setup options like work codes, billing rates. Those types of things make time tracking actually useful. If you don't have the appropriate buckets to put your time into, aka work codes, or you don't have appropriate billing rates to translate to your billing system, then your time entry is going to end up being kind of pointless. So when it really boils down, what you want to do is make sure that you go in before you dive into time tracking thoroughly and make sure to address those setup options. And those two things can be accessed under the setup menu here. If you guys head down to billing, you have your work codes and your billing rates right here. And these are going to be, again, the foundational points of actually tracking time within OfficeTools. So you want to make sure that, again, you guys address those. If you guys ever get new staff members or you want to add new codes, then you have to make sure that these pieces are in place before the time tracking actually begins. So just keep that in mind, where those are located, and that those are pivotal points to actual time entry. Now, when it really boils down, guys, remember how we were talking about a couple seconds ago here, different methods of time entry. So timers, which again, if you want more information on that, just let us know. But timers are considered the most accurate method of time entry if you guys can actually use timers appropriately. If you can start and stop it every time you switch gears or anything like that, then your timer method will end up being the most accurate method of time entry. Most of the time, especially in the accounting industry, which is what we're well versed in, that's going to be a little bit difficult to do. You guys are going to be up and moving. Someone's going to come in and interrupt you. You're going to forget that timer is running. And, in the end, you might have to adjust that timer later on. So while it can be most accurate, it definitely also can be not very accurate if all goes, south. So just understand timers can be defined as your most accurate method. Time cards, on the other hand, can be kind of defined as the best practice. So when we actually jump into time entry in OfficeTools, what we're going to recommend that you do a large majority of the time is utilize the time card methodology. So while there are other methods, the time card entry is actually considered the best practice because of how OfficeTools flows through the program itself. And I'll show you a little bit about that while we go through here. But just when you're jotting down notes, if you're listening and you want to take some information back with you to implement, time cards are considered the best practice. Okay. The last method of time entry, timesheet, directly on the timesheet itself. That's considered, the easiest, the most direct version of time entry, and it's a manual entry. You just key your time in directly. So your timers are your technical most accurate. Time cards are what we consider best practice, and your timesheet would be the quickest direct method of time entry. So that being said, time cards being the best practice, how do we access time cards? And there are two different methods to actually get a time card up on your window and utilize it to track time. The first method is a manual creation. And what I mean by that is that you actually go in and trigger a time card to come up on your screen. And that can happen in a couple different ways. First and foremost, if you guys go to your Notes tab or your To-Dos tab, you guys should see that you have a button that looks like this, and it has a clock and a little paper behind that clock, and you can see it says Create Time Card. Now, if you read through that, you can see that it says to create the time card based on the details of the currently selected task that you're on. So if you're on the to-do section, you create a time card. It's creating a time card for that to-do. If you're on the calls, it's creating a time card for that call. So you're already client specific because you have that client selected over here, and you're already task specific because you have that tab selected. Okay, so just understand that this generates a time card that's specific to this client and specific to the task on screen. Okay. So if we go in and we create our time card here, this is what a time card actually looks like. It has various fields, and these fields can kind of change a little bit, and I'll show you how to address that. But ultimately, what it's going to ask you is the staff member, a start and end time, the date, total amount of hours tracked, a work code, a project, and notes. Now, one major thing I want to bring your attention to here is that it does ask or has a checkbox here for billable, and technically you can check that. But for you and all of your staff members, I would highly recommend that you don't touch that box. Based on the work code that you choose right beneath that box, that will actually determine and check that box appropriately. So if you choose a billable work code, your billable box there will automatically be marked as billable. So you don't have to do these things manually. But this is effectively what a time card looks like. Now, part of our training today is going to be talking about how to get a lot of this to autofill, because what we don't want you to do is spend more time filling in your time card than actually doing the work. So we're going to talk about some ways to get a lot of this automatically filled in. But just understand that to get that time card to pop up, method number one, this is one way of doing that by clicking on that time card button in the toolbar. Also, if we have an item on our activity list down at the bottom, so we're going to go ahead and set this to show up today. We got it all good in there. Save that. I'm going to go to Brandon's list, and here's a task that shows up on our activity list. Okay. Here's actually the right task. So on top of creating a time card by clicking on the time card button, you can also right click on the task down at the bottom. And what's cool about this is you have a few different options that we'll talk about in conjunction with time cards. So you have complete without time card, you have create time card, and you have create and go to the time card. And a lot of times people don't really know what all of these mean and how they are going to interact with each other, but we're going to talk about that a little bit. So the complete option up here at the top works exactly the same as if you checked it off your list or if you checked it off completed in the actual task itself. And what that will do is complete the item, remove it from your activity list, and then pop up a time card on the screen for you. So it kind of does a couple things all at once, and that's what complete does. Okay, so if I hit complete, you'll notice that task removed off of my activity list down here at the bottom, and it pulled open that time card with some information pre-filled for me. So that's what complete does down there when you right click on your activity list. Now, complete without time card, this is really important to understand. Although it's not directly associated with tracking time via a time card, it is important. If you tracked time on an item that was tracked maybe via the timer, or if you just manually entered your time on your timesheet, then what you can do is complete that task without popping up on a time card. Because what a lot of people end up doing on accident is tracking their time via a timer, completing the task, having a time card pop up, and then tracking their time again. So you got to be aware of that. There is a possibility there, if you're using different methods of time entry, that you may be tricked into tracking time again on a time card. So just keep that in mind, pre-address it. If you wanted to complete that without popping a time card up, you can just right click on it, complete without time card. Okay. So although not tracking time with time cards, how to avoid duplicating time using a time card. Okay, so that's what that item means. Create time card. So this create time card option is the same as if you hit this button up here in the toolbar. What this is going to do is pop up a time card, but not complete the task. So the task will remain. So if you worked on it for a couple hours, it's time to go home, but you got to come back in tomorrow and wrap the task up. You want to create a time card from that task, but not remove it from your activity list. And in order to do that, you just hit that option there that says create time card. Again, that will pop up in the time card window, but it will not remove the task from your activity list. Okay. So a couple of tricks there. And then the last option in the right-click menu we want to talk about there is create and go to. So this is a little tricky, guys. A lot of time, most of the time, you're not going to need to do this. But if you go to create, and we'll put a work code in here. What it's actually going to do, you'll notice, is it takes you to the time tab once you get through the prompts. So we hit create and go to. It popped up the time card. We filled in our information, and actually it sent us to where that time card is on your timesheet. So it navigates you automatically to the time tab. Again, I don't know how often you might use that or how useful it will be for you specifically, but if you ever just wanted to go directly to the day that you track that timeline on your timesheet itself, you can always do that. So keep that in mind. Create and go to pops up that same time card window. You fill it out, move it on to the time tab. That's effectively what it does. Okay. So again, if you right click on that task, create and go to, it takes you from where you were on the to-dos tab and actually adjusts you over to the time tab. Now, one key thing to remember about that is that it still does not complete the task. So that task is still sitting down here at the bottom, and it's available for you to continue working on later. So create and go to is not a completion. And those are some of the manual methods of actually pulling a time card up on your window. You have your button in the toolbar, create time card. You can right click on your task, complete it, which will create a time card and remove the item off of your list. You can create a time card which will just pop up a time card but not complete the task, and then create and go to, which will do the same as create time card, pop up a time card on your list, not complete your task, but it will also navigate you to the time tab itself. And those are the manual entries of time cards. So in the grand scheme of things, if you needed to just get a quick time entry, you wanted to pull it up on, create it manually, those are the methods that you would use. But in most cases, what we're going to say is that you don't want to do those stuff. And here's the reason why. And this jumps us into method number 2, which is auto creation of time cards. So how do you get a time card to automatically create? There's really only two ways. Number 1 is just by checking the item off as completed in the task itself. If you complete that task, okay, and it just so happens that that didn't pop up a time card that time, so excuse me. Normally what will happen when you complete a task is it will pop up a time card just like that. Okay. Whether you complete it from within the task itself or you complete it from the activity list. Those are the two methods. Okay. And when we get into our settings, we'll adjust what was needed there. Okay. So you check the item off of your list as being completed using your little check mark on the activity list. That pops up your create time card option. It's the same as if you clicked here. It's the same as if you right clicked and hit create time card. It's exactly the same thing. The only difference is that you also completed it ahead of time, which if you're not in the practice of doing, you need to be. If you didn't attend the activity list webinar, I highly recommend that you get access to that, because your activity list is your lifeline of your entire firm. If you're not completing tasks off of your list, then you are not managing the OfficeTools program well. By completing the tasks, which you should be doing anyway, you will also get the ability to track time. Same exact thing. You can put in a start and end time. You can put in total hours. You choose your work code. You choose your project if applicable, and you go ahead and pop in some notes. Okay, and that's your automatic creation, and that should be what you guys actually have popping up a majority of the time. You will use a combination of the automatic creation, which happens when you complete a task, and when you right click on a task and create time card. Those two should be what you use most frequently, because you're either going to be done with the task or you're going to not be done with the task. If you're done, you check it off your list, time card pops up. If you're not done, you need to track some time, then you right click, create time card. But all in all, different methods of creating time cards, that's really what you have. So, you have your automatic creation, which happens from completing a task off of your activity list, and then you have your manual creation in the various methods that we've covered up to this point. So now that we know how to create a time card and we understand that there are different methods, how do we get to the point where our time cards that are popping up have as much information filled in as possible? And there are a lot of things to keep in mind here. And in the long run, a lot of this should be set up globally. So that's going to be kind of where we talk about first is our global time card options. So first and foremost, if you guys go to setup and you go to my company and then you go to information and settings, this is how you access your global options. And you go down to this option here that says payroll and time. There's a couple things I want to bring up. Obviously, fill in your payroll stuff. That doesn't really have anything to do with time tracking, more just time reporting. So make sure all of that's filled in correctly. But if we jump over to time settings, there's something very specific here that I want to bring up. And that is right here where it says actual time rounding and billable time rounding. Although not directly associated with time cards specifically and just all methods of time entry, this is really important. We've been getting a lot of questions about this recently, and I want to bring your guys' attention to this. So in OfficeTools, you actually have the capability of tracking your actual time, which obviously then, if it's billable, translates into billable time. However, those can actually be set to round in different increments. So your actual time can be set one way, and when it shows up in the billing screen, it can show up a different way. The actual time will never change, right? So if you track an hour, it's always going to show that you tracked an hour. Right? But in the billable section, you could have it set to round to a specific interval. So if you always wanted inside of OfficeTools, every single WIP entry that you have to be in 15-minute increments, then you could set your billable time to round to 15-minute increments. But in OfficeTools, your actual time can still exist to the 100th. So it does not have to be in a 15-minute increment. It could exist out to the 100th, right? Because you technically don't want to pay your employees for more time than what they've actually worked. So that's why typically actual time is either set to do not round at all or round to the 100th. But I just wanted you to be aware of that, because as you're keying in time, some people look at their timesheet, look at their actual, look at their billable, and their billable time is actually set as more than what their actual time is set as. And that can happen depending upon these settings. So I just wanted to bring your guys' attention to that. The next option over here on the other settings is really what we want to focus on here. And it says allow automatic time card creation when completing and it gives you all of the different tasks. So these are allowing these specific items to have time cards that are created for them automatically. So if you remember when we checked this task off of our list at the bottom, a time card popped up. We control which tasks actually have that option. And remember that this is a global option. So you're setting the opportunity for this to actually happen, right? If you as a firm do not want time to be tracked for reviews automatically, then you can turn that off. No staff member will then be able to turn it on. So these are your global options that control which tasks allow automatic time card creation. Okay, so keep that in mind. Your individualized time settings, right? Your staff-specific options can be accessed under Setup, down to My Settings, and here's your options here. So the same type of thing down here at the bottom left, you can see Auto Create Time Cards for, and then all the same types of checkboxes. Now, you'll notice that Notes are grayed out and you can't check it. That's because in your global options, which we just visited, you'll remember that the notes box was not checked, meaning that globally we've turned off the capability for notes to have time card automatically pop up. But if I, as a staff member, know that I'm going to track my time for calls using a timer, I can turn off the auto create time cards option for calls specifically. That way, when I complete the call off of my list, I don't get a time card that pops up because I know that I already tracked that time in the timer window. So that's how you can utilize this to make sure that you're being efficient in time tracking. By the way, guys, we have about 5 minutes left, so if you have any questions, feel free to just type them in there, and if I see some pop up, I'll go ahead and address them. If you have questions that you want to talk about something specific for your firm, please email us at training@officetools.com, training@officetools.com. That comes to us as a department, and we'll be more than happy to address those. Now, some of the autofill settings I want to bring up to you include default work codes. And the default work codes are going to be helpful when you guys are kind of going through your day-to-day. It'll allow you to get some information just filling into your time entries automatically without you having to pick the same work code, 100 times a day. And you can see that under the same options for my settings, they're located right here. So these are staff specific still, okay? Meaning that when Brandon logs in, Brandon plugs in his own default values here, and if somebody else logs in, they will plug in their default values. So if I know for a fact that the work code I use almost every single day is going to be bookkeeping, then I can populate that in there. If my to-dos that I do tend to go towards payroll, then I can put that in there, or payroll processing, or whatever it might be. If my phone calls tend to have to do with tax returns, and I can fill that in, and so on and so forth down the line. Then anytime any of these pop up, it's going to pick the appropriate default code in there. So again, just keep that in mind, to make your time tracking efficient, which is a lot of people's worry in new programs or programs that, they haven't tracked time in before, or people who are coming from not tracking time really at all. Efficiency is a big key, and these items help with that efficiency. Making sure that information is filling in automatically is going to be important in the long run. And last but not least, to wrap this up, where do time cards actually end up? All right, so you popped up a time card, you filled it out. What happens to it? Where does it go? And that's what we're going to wrap up today's session with. All methods of time entry, including timers, definitely time cards, and manual entry onto your timesheet, they actually all accumulate on your timesheet. So if you go to the time tab here, if you remember when we hit this right click option and we went to create and go to time card here, it took us to the time tab. And the time tab itself is where all of your time accumulates. So if you create time cards, they actually go to your timesheet. And if you don't know already, this is a staff specific, right? That's the person logged in there, daily timesheet. So each of your days is located over here, and they're broken out. So you're only viewing time entered on a daily basis. That way you can make sure that you have an appropriate amount of time tracked. And that's in all how you guys are going to be tracking time utilizing time cards. Right? From creation, different methods, how in context time is tracked in OfficeTools, all the way through some of your default and autofill options, and getting to where the time is actually housed, which is here on your timesheet. That should get you to the point where you can track time effectively utilizing time cards. So thank you guys very much for attending today's Free Training Thursday. Definitely go to abacusnext.com/webinars. Take a look at the upcoming schedule. Sign up for anything that sticks out. Visit abacusmaximus.com. Take a look at the agenda there. See if there's anything that appeals to you guys. I highly recommend from a training perspective that you guys get there, learn from us, learn from other users, and see what that has to offer. And I'm signing off for today. So thanks again, guys, and hopefully we see you guys next week.